Order. Please stand, His Honor.
Let us pray. Lord, on this morning, Thursday, we pray for your gift of love. That we may know your love to us, may show love to one another. Lord God, whose Son, Jesus Christ, commanded us to love one another, take from us all that leads to uncharitable thoughts and actions. And by showing gentleness to all those we meet, we open their eyes to the transformative love that has been shown to us in the same Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, February 27, 2024 to be deferred. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
Second that.
Questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those are members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by His Honor, the Speaker.
I am receipt of a letter from the Auditor General. There, Mr. Speaker, special audit report on the acquisition and construction of steel frame housing units by the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. I have the honor of submitting to you for laying before the House of the Assembly in accordance with Section 77, subsection 2 and Section 77, subsection 5 of the Public Finance Management Act 2019-1, my special audit report on the acquisition and construction of steel frame housing units by the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. In accordance with Section 77, subsection 5, the report should be laid before the House of Assembly as soon as possible after its receipt. Kindly let me know when the report has been laid. Yours faithfully, Leah Trotman, Auditor General.
Messages from Her Excellency the President, petitions, papers.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I'm commanded to lay the annual report of the Dighton Griffith Secondary School for the year September 1st, 2021 to August 31st, 2022. I'm also commanded to lay the annual reports and audited financial statements of Needham's Point Development, Inc. and Needham's Point Holdings Limited for the year ended March 31st, 2022, as well as the annual reports and audited financial statements of Hotels and Resorts Limited for the year ended March 31st, 2022, and the annual reports and audited financial statements of the Barbados Aircraft and Aviation Services Company Limited for the year ended March 31st, 2022.
Government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance. Orders of the day.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Questions that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 9, in the name of the Honorable Acting Attorney General, Minister of Legal Affairs, to move the second reading of the Notaries Public Bill 2024.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
Mr. Speaker, there are few times that I've risen to speak with as much or as great of an internal smile as I actually have now. So it would be entirely inappropriate for me to do skin cuffings in here and do cartwheels over what may appear to some people to be one of the most mundane amendments that we're making, and it having little to no impact on the average Barbadian, many of whom would not even know what we're talking about. But because of the import it does have when it is required, those who have had cause to use it, or worse yet, suffer from the difficulty in being able to access the service, will understand what it is I'm talking about. What am I talking about, sir? I'm talking about Notaries Public. What is a notary? Barbadians are more familiar with the term justice of the peace. Forever, I think the British system and our local system have acknowledged the role of a justice of the peace. Somebody who is not necessarily trained in law, but who lives in a neighborhood, is familiar with people, and is able, having taken an oath to uphold the law, to carry out certain functions that allow business to happen. Simple things, sir, like I may have back in the days when you wrote a note to a shopkeeper and said, look, please give X person 12 eggs and a ham, and you sign it, right? Your signature back then carried a lot of weight, whether it's on something as simple as that or on an oath or on a mortgage. And back then, the person charged with verifying or authenticating a signature, if there was some dispute, was that person called the Notary Public. Called the Justice of the Peace. So the Justice of the Peace was a person in Barbados who, when a signature had to be authenticated, is the person who would write on the document that appeared before me was one, I was about to say Ralph A. Thorne, just by reference, but let's not go there. Appeared before me one John Doe, right? Who signed this document in my presence, and I hereby acknowledge that this is his true and correct signature. So anybody who got the document now and saw the seal of the Justice of the Peace and saw the Justice of the Peace effectively had countersigned and validated it, can take it to the bank, literally take it to the bank as proof that the signature was the correct signature. This has served us for a very long time, sir. And the Justice of the Peace was a very important person in the community. The Justice of the Peace, I think, count the same pension checks. In some instances, once a year, they would have to validate that the person who's receiving this thing is still alive, right? Other things like that. If a mortgage document, if a document had to be done, they would count the same, saying that although the document come to you and the person is not there presenting it, this is their signature, and I saw them do it, right? So they were a big person in the community, and they were, for a large measure, persons from within the community who had some measure of influence within the community, and were persons who were generally held in high esteem within their community. These included priests, shopkeepers, in many instances retired school teachers, right? Community leaders, retired police officers, people like that. People who were generally held in high esteem. And this worked well and good, sir, within Barbados. Because within Barbados, who ain't know you, know somebody know you. So it was easy to accept the role of the Justice of the Peace and the documents validated by the Justice of the Peace. However, sir, the Justice of the Peace regime had no real application outside of the British system, outside of our system. So we started to run into some difficulties when documents were required to be used as evidence overseas in a non-British territory. And you then had to have the signatures or the document itself validated or authenticated. Simple things, sir, like if I want to send a picture of my passport by a data page. In Barbados, I can turn my passport. If it is required for evidence, let's say United States for something, a land transaction, an estate transaction, I'm not sending my passport up there. So you send a copy, but how do we know the copy is valid? In Barbados, a Justice of Peace can certify that copy as having been seen by him, the original having been seen. But that Justice of Peace has no weight outside of Barbados. So to go to ye old shopkeeper and say, just sign off here saying that there's a true copy of my passport. It reaches New York, and they say, well, who's this? What is this? We don't know about this. So the role of the notary, sir, gained importance as Barbados started to deal more and more with outside influences. What is a notary? What is the actual definition of a notary, sir? A notary public is a public official constituted by law to serve the public in non-contentious matters. Non-contentious, we know, are things that don't necessarily involve court, and generally on the civil side of things as opposed to the criminal side. The notary's work varies from certifying that company and business documents and transactions have been duly signed before him or her, to authenticating personal documents and information for immigration or emigration purposes, or to apply to marry or work abroad. And notaries specialize in administering oaths and affirmations for domestic and international transactions and documentations for use abroad. And in recent years, sir, the need for notaries has grown significantly as Barbados trades more and more outside of its borders, and our documentation needs to be verified more and more outside of its borders. Now, sir, we do have a regime of notaries, and historically, the notaries in Barbados have all been from the public service, and not just from the public service. Initially, so I believe it was limited to registrars of the various departments and deputy registrars. So that would be registrars of titles, and generally the registrars of titles will only certify something dealing with land transactions. The registrar of corporate affairs and deputy registrar of corporate affairs, and invariably, initially, they only wanted to deal with things to do with companies. The registrar is Supreme Court and deputy registrar is Supreme Court. So straight off the bat, we see that we're limited. Initially, we were limited to about 6 persons. The decision was taken in 2017, sir, to expand the categories of persons to include the following: the Solicitor General, the Deputy Solicitor General, Permanent Secretary in the Office of the AG, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Home Affairs, PS in the Ministry of International Business, DPS in the Office of the Attorney General, DPS in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, DPS in the Ministry of Home Affairs, DPS in the Ministry of International Business, Supervisor of Insolvency, Registrar of the Supreme Court, Deputy Registrar of the Supreme Court, Registrar of Companies, and the Deputy Registrar of Companies. Now, once again, we have a bit of a problem. All of these persons are public officials. And without sounding bad, sir, these persons can only be accessed between X time and Y time, usually between 8 o'clock or 8:30 and 4:30. Back in 2017, when this came up, when this amendment came up, I made the point, I was in the other place at the time, sir, and I made the point that we were missing the perfect opportunity to expand it a lot further than that. If we do transactions overseas, sir, you may have dealt with matters, legal matters overseas. Attorneys over a certain amount of call are allowed to authenticate documents, and most of them become notaries automatically. Even if you don't require a notary for the purpose of taking an oath or certifying a document within the state in which you operate, the attorney over a certain amount of call and accountants are automatically taken to be able to administer oaths or to certify certain documents. Now, sir, we made an amendment in Barbados that allowed attorneys to certify, to take oaths for affidavits for use in court proceedings. And that was done as a stopgap because we accepted that in many instances, if you had an urgent application, if you had something that was immediately relevant for a business transaction, that the ability to access a notary or some other person qualified to take an oath was often very, very difficult. And it doesn't make sense to file a document requiring an oath, which the oath has not been taken before a valid person, and then you come in afterwards, because that's fraud. So for pure business efficacy, for the ease, we keep talking about the ease of doing business, for the ease of doing business, the amendment in 2017 was insufficient. We expanded from a limited category of public officials to a slightly less limited category of public officials. But that was not sufficient. And quite frankly, sir, we were spinning top in mud. That was taking incremental steps when you already know where the goalpost is. If you know where the goalpost is, it makes sense to reach that goalpost in one go. And I predicted at the time that very likely we will have to come back to expand that category further. And sir, here we are. So it gave me almost a malicious pleasure to be the person to actually lead this particular debate. No, no, sir, let's give a practical example of why this is necessary. I think it's often critical, it's often instructive if people can actually see a story as it develops. I personally was involved in a matter, sir, that required someone in Barbados to submit a bid for something in New York. And the bid had to go in by 4 p.m. Barbados time. 4 p.m. Barbados time. I don't know why the person waited so late, but you know, they waited late. So come the day, we started at 9 o'clock trying to get the thing notarized. The signature had to be notarized because the documents are quite clear. They don't say, please certify in front of an oath taker. They don't say, please do it in front of a competent person. It says documents must be certified by a Notary Public. If it says that, then Notary Public it has to be. So we literally called every single person at the time, which was the limited category, at the time listed as a Notary Public in Barbados. Corporate Affairs did not want to do it because it had nothing to do strictly with companies. So the Registrar of Corporate Affairs and the Deputy Registrar of Corporate Affairs said they're not comfortable to sign that. We tried at the Supreme Court. The Registrar was not there at the time, and the Deputy Registrar was unavailable. We figured, well, you know what? Sometime before then, before the end of the day, somebody had to come back. So at about 1 o'clock, we called, people were out to lunch. I then explained the urgency and I asked for a number to contact the persons at. No number was forthcoming because back in the days they didn't give out public officers' personal cell phone numbers. We're coming on to 3 p.m., sir. 3 p.m., the document had to be sent off. We had to verify it. We just had to verify it was sent off. You had to scan the documents, show that the documents had been thing, and verify that it was sent off. 3 p.m., sir, we are scrambling, and by now, $4 million is hanging in the balance for want of a notarial certificate and an apostille. We got that. I managed to reach, I don't want to call the person's name, I managed to reach somebody for whom I am forever grateful. And they were on vacation. They came down to the registry and they certified the document, put on the stamp. We were able to get the document off. And interestingly, the Barbadian company did in the end win the bid. But the point is, had it not been for the fact that somebody was kind enough and saw the importance of it to disturb themselves, to leave their vacation and come down and do what was necessary, $4 million would have been burned. Now, why? In the States and in other countries, notaries public are as common as justice of peace are in Barbados. If you go into, not Target, and any of those places, sir, the copy place, the place that does the copies, right? In the States, you will see one of the persons who might be a cashier or whatever would have next to their thing Notary Public on it, by their station. You can go and get your document notarized there by them. That person carries the same weight as the registrar and deputy registrar of the Supreme Court, but it's just a different system. So notaries up there are just accepted as the office for oath-taking and verification of documents in the same way that JPs are largely accepted for in Barbados. But JPs will work here. Lawyers will work here. But from the time you now have to export that document to somewhere else, the acknowledged entity has the title of Notary Public. And the only ones that we have are the ones that I just listed, which is a very limited and select group of persons. What is intended to be done, sir, by this current legislation? The business community has been crying out for a very long time. The legal fraternity has been crying out for a very long time. The accountants and anybody who does business overseas, sir, has been crying out for a very, very long time. So we have heard you. We've come today to do what we should have done in 2017. We're expanding the categories of persons who can be notaries public. Now understand, sir, I say we expanded the categories because you satisfy the minimum requirement does not mean you get it as of right. You still have to apply to get it because there must be some ability to approve certain persons and also to take away if the person is not functioning properly. Who are those persons? No, sir. Attorneys of over 15 years call. Accountants who have been practicing for over 15 years. And there's also provisions, sir, for members of the public to apply to be qualified as notaries public, but they would then have to do some sort of course, some sort of training and pass the training to be able to get that certification. Now, sir, why do we have it as such? As it stands now, our JPs have to get training. Before, when the lawyers, if a lawyer wanted to be a JP, we did not set or acknowledge their legal training. The lawyers who are JPs had to go through the same basic training that the Justice of the Peace had to, which was unnecessary, but it was the only system that they had. Since then, we've acknowledged that the legal training itself already has built in the ability to understand the importance of what it is you're doing, the ability to know the importance of an oath, because we take oaths every day in court. The ability to recognize the importance of verifying a signature, because that's what we do as our bread and butter. So even for lawyers to certify documents, when the amendment was made, the lawyer did not have to undertake any particular training or on the account of any particular training because they are already familiar with the basics of it. I don't want to undersell or diminish the importance of it, but sir, it's not brain surgery. You are, as anyone else can do, using your common sense. If somebody brings a document because they don't want to send, like if my good friend, sir, from Christchurch West was asked to send his marriage certificate, if you can find it, was asked to send his marriage certificate, sir, overseas for some reason, he may not want to release that very important document, sir, out of his control. So what does he do? He photocopies it. But some internationally recognized person must be able to say that this document, this photocopy, is a true and accurate representation of the marriage certificate of one member for Christchurch West and one Mrs. member for Christchurch West. The original having been seen by me. So that now stands in the place, it's a certified copy effectively. That now stands in the place with the same evidential weight and value of the original document. So you don't have to let go of your original documents. If there's a question, sir, as to whether or not an affidavit was signed, you want, I mean, frauds exist. There are people who will forge your signature for anything if it's of benefit to them. So an affidavit saying that I know this person and that one John Doe, also known as Jonathan Doe, also known as John Dozer, right, is one and the same person. It is obviously in his interest to verify that he's those three people, or he's known by those names. And an affidavit coming from Wilfred Abrams saying that, sir, may not have the signature of one Wilfred Abrams. So you need to be comfortable that the signature on the affidavit, which verifies this most important piece of evidence, because an affidavit is actually evidence, it's sworn evidence, or a sworn statement of fact. The affidavit verifying this sworn piece of evidence was actually signed by the person who they say it was signed by. Now, in Barbados, the lawyers can actually witness that now. But if you want it to be used overseas, then it's of no import. It has to be certified by a notary public. The notary public has a specific form of seal. Some of them, if you go to the Supreme Court, sir, when they notarize a document, they have the imprint seal so that you can literally feel the stamp and the embossment, if that's a word. They have a raised seal that you can actually feel the texture of the seal. And then they have a golden seal, which is stamped over that. And then they sign at the bottom, verifying that they are a notary public. So it's all official. Anybody can now take full confidence that that document has been validly witnessed, or that document is a copy of the document which it purports to represent. We do them all the time now, sir. A notary, and it's not just for documents overseas. Recently, some financial institutions in Barbados have been asking for notarized copies of documents in Barbados as well. So more and more, the weight attached to a notarial certificate is cropping up more and more internally in Barbados. So we're at the point now where, sir, 6 doesn't cut it. The expanded amount, I didn't count them, let's call them 15, doesn't cut it. It is so much a factor of everyday life that we need to have them a lot more accessible. And there's no good person, there's no good reason that anybody who undertakes a course of training and thus qualifies themselves should not have the same power. We in the British system, sir, we were too much, in many instances, on pomp and ceremony. We were too much on titles. It was all about exclusion. It must be exclusive. That rarefied air of notary public must be exclusive. It's not that exclusive anywhere else. It is functional. It is practical. It is utilitarian. For us to now improve our ease of doing business, we actually have to make all of the avenues that are required to do business a lot easier and a lot more accessible. And this, sir, is one of those. Now, if I just take us through some of it, sir. 1 second. A person, sir, pursuant to paragraph 3, a person can be appointed as a notary public if he satisfies the requirement for appointment under this act. What are those? Any person holding or acting in the public office specified in the first schedule should be ex officio. By ex officio, we mean that they get it by virtue of their office. Shall be ex officio a notary public in Barbados. A person may be appointed as a notary if that person, A, is a citizen or permanent resident of Barbados. So in Barbados, you have to be a citizen or a permanent resident. The lesser status of immigrant status is not going to work. And if you're a non-national and not a citizen and not a resident, you can't get it either. So a citizen or permanent resident of Barbados, if you are the holder of a CARICOM skilled national certificate and you're ordinarily resident in Barbados, because, sir, you have to be somebody connected to the country in which you're providing the service. You're a notary public in and for Barbados. You have to have never been convicted of an offense punishable by imprisonment. Never been found guilty of any act that constitutes misconduct in a professional respect or misconduct under this act. So any lawyer who has been disbarred, any accountant who's been struck off their role, any doctor who has been removed from practicing, none of you will qualify. You cannot have been a judge bankrupt. That is basically it, sir. And you have to meet all the criteria specified in the section. Now, a person, this is the important part, a person is eligible for appointment if that person is an attorney at law who's been practicing law in Barbados for at least 15 years and who is in good standing with the Barbados Bar Association. Or if you're a certified public or chartered accountant who's been practicing in Barbados for at least 15 years and who is in good standing with a recognized accounting body, or C, possesses at least 10 years professional or business experience in Barbados and is of good character. I think that should be 15 years, sir. Possesses at least 15 years professional or business experience in Barbados and of good character. Every person other than an attorney at law shall complete a course of training prescribed by the Attorney General. So, once you meet the minimal qualifications, you have to undergo the course of training. So I correct something I said a little bit earlier, sir. So the accountants will still have to undergo the course of training as well. But they will be qualified once they've been in practice for at least 15 years. Now, sir, what do you have to do to be appointed as a notary public? You have to submit an application writing to the registrar, and it should be accompanied by the following documents: proof of the applicant's citizenship or permanent residence, and 2 character references, one of which must be from among the following persons: an employer or former employer, justice of the peace, a notary public, a minister of religion, a police officer of the rank of inspector or above, a certified public or chartered accountant, an attorney at law, a medical doctor, or a member of parliament. And then you have the normal things, sir: photograph, police certificate of character, proof of admission to practice law in Barbados, etc. The person who is appointed as a notary public has to deposit with the registrar an impression of the embossed notarial seal in the form to be used by them as a notary public and pay the prescribed fee to the registrar. If the seal is going to be pretty much the same, persons may personalize the seal and put their name in the seal. So the seal has to be approved and the seal has to be registered, because if, in case of any doubt as to whether the seal is valid, then the registrar, the person responsible for keeping these records, has to be able to check that seal against the seal that you have registered as your official seal, and that forms part of the validity validation process. Obviously, there's a fee to be paid, sir, and upon appointment as a notary public and the payment of the fee, the registrar shall issue a notary public certificate to the person appointed as a notary public in the form set out in the 6th schedule. Every year, sir, in the official gazette, in the month of February, an alphabetical list of the persons who've obtained the certification for that year will be published, and fees have to be paid. The registrar shall keep the Registrar of Notaries Public, sir, which will have every person who's appointed a notary public under the act, the date of the appointment, the address, and the profession of the person. And the registrar may remove from the roll the name of any person whose appointment has been revoked under the act. Now, also, sir, the renewal and payment of fees, as applies to most of us, most professions, if you don't pay the fees by the 31st day of January, I think you get a penalty of equivalent to 1/2 of the annual fee. Upon payment of the fee, you'll be reinstated. All right? The acts that they're allowed to perform are the acts set out in the 7th schedule, which is basically most of what I told you before. Sir, proceedings for misconduct, suspension, or revocation. The appointment of a notary may be suspended by the registrar if the notary allows his name to be used by another person to perform notarial acts. So this grant and certification, sir, is a personal certification. It can't be delegated. You can't tell your secretary, just put on our stamp for me. If the person charges or accepts a fee for notarial act in contravention of Section 9, or fails to act in accordance with a notice from the registrar. The appointment of a notary public may be revoked if the notary public is convicted of an offense punishable by imprisonment, adjudged bankrupt, deemed unfit, and the High Court has made an order appointing a receiver for that notary public. If they're found guilty of an act that constitutes misconduct, whether in his capacity as a notary public or in his professional occupation, or has been found negligent in the discharge of his duty. And when the appointment of a notary is suspended or revoked, the registrar shall endorse a notation of the suspension in the Registrar of Notaries to remove the name of the notary public from the register as the case may be. The other thing, sir, that the notary has to do, a notary has to obviously notify the registrar within 30 days of the occurrence of any of the following events. You have to notify of a change of address, change of status or nationality or permanent residence, a change of professional occupation. And the notary as well has to keep a register of all notarial acts. So if I notarize the birth certificate of the Honourable Member for St. Philip South, I have to write in my register that on this day I appeared before me and I notarized his birth certificate. If you are witnessing an affidavit, you have to make a notation. You have to keep an accurate record because what you're doing is validating evidence. What you're doing is certifying important documents. So it can be that you do it and you send it on and somebody comes back to you and it's called to proof and you actually can't remember. You actually have to keep a record of all you have done, because if it is challenged, you must be able to say and verify that it has been done, or if you don't have it in your register, that is proof that somebody was fraudulently acting on your behalf. So, sir, that is basically it in relation to this piece of legislation. If I generally speak, sir, to the fact that we not just need to look at this, but I believe it is incumbent upon us who use the system, who use all the systems in Barbados, to weigh in. There's now a Department of Citizenship engagement within the Prime Minister's office, sir. Persons who are doing business or who are encountering difficulties in doing business or doing simple things, you need to weigh in. Quite often, people believe that those in authority know everything. And I guess there are some of those persons in authority like to convey the impression that they know everything. I'm not looking at anybody. But sir, people assume that we know where the difficulties lie, the blockages lie. Maybe the difficulty that you have experienced in dealing with a particular government department or a process is peculiar to you, and you're the first person it's happened to. But chances are, if it has happened to you, it will likely happen to somebody else. So it's only by giving the feedback that we can then correct the things that need to be corrected. This one, sir, it has taken a while to come here. And as I said, the last amendment enough was not done on the last amendment, but the business community has kept at it. And the lawyers have kept at it. And the bar has kept at it. And the international business community has kept at it. So we have heard the cry and we've adjusted. But there are a number of areas, sir, quite frankly, that I actually believe can do with some improvement as well. If I may use the example of the immigration department. The immigration department used to get a lot of concerns and a lot of complaints about their processes and their policies, the way they did things, the length of time it took to do things, some of the documentation that was being asked for, whatnot. And I took the opportunity, sir, to sit down with every single head of the immigration department, every single head of department under the immigration department. And we literally went through every single process of the immigration department, everyone. What is required for in a work permit? Why are you asking for this? I understand why it used to be asked for, but now that we have technology, do you still need this? What is the mischief you're trying to correct? What is it that you actually want? We then, sir, went through work permits, immigrant status, residency, citizenship, everything, and tried to take out unnecessary steps. For example, persons who were coming to get a passport, who had lost a passport, who they could not find a passport, they had to go to the police station and fill out a form to say the passport was missing. And invariably they said the passport was stolen. People went, perjured themselves, fill out a form, made a report to the police that the passport was stolen. This is to get a new passport. Why? Back when that police report was required, we were not digital. The passport was, the actual physical presentation of the passport was necessary to effect something. If your passport was not expired, your passport only became invalid if the date for the renewal of the passport had passed. So if somebody turned up with the passport in that period of time, then there was nothing to say that the passport was not valid. So if they wanted to cancel a passport, for example, you had to physically bring the passport in, and they cut the end off the passport, so that if somebody presents a passport to you with the end missing, you know that passport has been canceled. But we kept all of the requirements before giving somebody a new passport. They had to bring in the old one to cut off the end. We now have passports that are scannable. For any time they scan your passport, what comes up on that screen is all your information. All the information you submitted, where you went to last, if you were deported from Barbados, if there's a negative reference against you somewhere, if Interpol looking for you, if whoever, all that comes up when they scan the passport. If your passport has been revoked, it comes up. You no longer physically need to bring in the passport to get it cut. But we were still requiring people to bring in the passport to get it cut. So a lot of things are being required within our public service only because no one has changed them yet, where the practical application has long since become irrelevant. Now, if you wish, sir, you can go and change your passport as many times as you want, once you pay the fee. When we put out the new pretty passport, sir, we had the new issue of passports last year. I think mine is, sorry, I was about to take my number. We put out the new issue of passports. When we did such a good job of publicizing them, sir, that people actually waited. People held back last year from renewing their passports because they didn't want to get another one, another of the old stock. They wanted the new one with the trailer in it, with the bridge in it, with all the things. If you flip it like this, you see a caricature moving, right? They wanted that one. Some people whose passport was valid for another 3 years. A person literally came to me and said, Mr. Abrams, so to get one of these new passports, I got to report this one is stolen. I said, if you want a new passport, go and apply for a new passport. Go on, this one has additional features. So I'm actually happy if more people get this one and get rid of the old one. I said, go and apply for it. He said, but Mr. Abrams, but I have one. I said, don't worry, we can cancel that in the system. But it required a change in approach of the persons who administer the system as well. We need to be honest with ourselves across the entirety of government. It is not our job to go to work every day and push papers and keep turning that mill. It's not our job to keep perpetuating inefficient systems or inefficient policies. Those who actually are in it, those in the licensing authority, those in immigration, those in customs, those in whatever, if you realize that there's a built-in inefficiency in your system, then bring it to the attention of somebody. Simply by taking that step out that might not be worth anything, you may save the government millions of dollars. If you use another one, sir, we had, in the same immigration department, we had 2 printers. One printed the bulk of the passport, then one printed a particular page. It was a biodata page or something. It printed a particular page. So you had to send it through one printer, and then a particular page was printed and laminated and put into the passport. But there was no need for the page. But we hit a snag because that particular printer broke down. And it's only when we went to address that concern that I asked, but why do we have this page? There was a pause. I said, is this actually required by the international body? It does not exist in the American passport. And they said no. I said, so why don't we take it out? Because we have the printer. I said, but the printer not working. You know, in one, sir, in short order, that was removed. We no longer had to have that printer. We no longer had to have the 2 people who were assigned to deal with that printer there. We could put them to do something else. The government did not have to buy a printer for $300,000, and we did not have to incur the additional cost of that page in the passport. Everybody knew that it was not serving any purpose. Everybody knew it was not making any sense, but it was there. It was step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, passport at the end. If we could take out step 3, 1, 2, 4, 5, it doesn't affect the process, it doesn't affect the validity, then why are we still doing 3? And this does not, I keep using the immigration department, sir, because we went through a comprehensive exercise with that. But this applies across the board. So if you get me to the licensing authority, why is it that I must pay for a license here and then go somewhere else to get the picture taken? So I stand up in one line somewhere, then go somewhere else to do something, and then take a receipt somewhere else. Why? Why do we have so many steps in our processes? Why is it that, sir, that with some aspects of it, let me not target the BRA on this one, but some things you can fill them all online, you can do it all online, but you still have to take yourself with the document you fill out online down to somewhere else to stand up in a line to wait and then go and pay. If we can fill out the forms online, why do we not just take the next step to do the payment online? We pay things online all the time. People pay their mortgage online. They pay Flow and Digicel online. They go on Amazon and do it online. Our systems have a number of built-in inefficiencies that we need to systematically identify and take out of our system. Every additional step is a waste of time. Every additional step is costing that person money. I know my good friend from Christchurch South, sir, an eminent lawyer like he is, in many instances, they charge by the hour. Accountants charge by the hour. A number of other professions charge by the hour. If people actually sit down and think about it, right? If you're in the entertainment business and you have to set up, if you charge a flat fee for something, the faster you get it done, the better it is for you. So then your time has a monetary component attached to it. People, if they think about it, can value their time. A person who's working in government, you're working in government making $2,500 a month. You know you put in 40 hours a week, by how many weeks in a month? You know for X amount of hours, I get X amount of pay. You can value your time. My time is worth $15 an hour, $30 an hour. Every time I'm standing up in a line that I don't need to be in, that is time that I could be making money or doing something else. We need to weed out these inefficiencies. So I'm actually encouraging people. We have a whole department of citizen engagement, a whole one. It is not just to take complaints, it's also to take suggestions. How can the government work to improve your life, your ease of doing business, to make things easier for you? We often can't think of it all on our own. The users in the system are the head ones who know what the issues are. The persons at the registry, the Supreme Court, they know where the issues are with the system. They know where the delays are. And sometimes, sir, if you talk to them, people complain to you, I can't believe you're doing so and so, I can't believe you're still doing X, Y, and Z. Right? But have you said anything to anybody else? We owe it to ourselves, sir, and the other person who use our assorted systems to actually make those systems as efficient as possible. I don't believe in lines. I also believe, sir, that, the honorable member, sir, is trying her best to digitize Barbados, get all of our systems online, right? Get all of our systems online, let everything talk to everything else. Let us be as harmonious as possible. But sir, quite frankly, I do not believe that anybody should ever have to go into a government office unless it's critical that you appear in person. I think every single service, the things that are repeat things, licenses, you should not have to go and stamp in licensing authority unless your face is so changed that your picture is unrecognizable. And there's still a method, a way to upload those things, right? You should not have to turn up at the registry of the Supreme Court to get a birth certificate. You should be able to order that online. You should never have to walk into the Office of Corporate Affairs and Intellectual Property unless it is a signed document and that signature has to be done in person for some evidential reason. When we start to take persons out of the system, we start to make the system a lot more efficient. We save people's times, we reduce stress, we reduce congestion, all those things. So I'm here on my soapbox. I'm here with my crusade because, sir, I absolutely hate wasting time. I'll give you one last one, sir. So there was actually a pivotal moment in my life. I had my Damascus moment. I was like Saul on his way to Damascus, sir, and the light shone.
We're in Lenten season, my friend.
We are in the Lenten season, sir.
Honourable member.
At least, sir, he did not say it was Jesus on his way to Calgary. Sir, I was at the immigration department. And this is why, sir, I tell you, I smiled. I told you at the beginning, sir, that I smiled when I became the person to actually present this piece of legislation. And I'm only here by default. I'm here because this falls properly under the Honourable Attorney General, but I'm standing in his shoes for a couple of days. So fortune has it that I was able to deliver on this one, which was one of my pet peeves. But sir, I went to the immigration department, scrambling, running from court to go to the immigration department to go back to court. And I went to collect my passport. I had to apply for my passport. But then you had to wait about 3 or 4 weeks to get your passport. Right now, sir, you can get your passport. Do you know this? 3 days is standard. It can be delivered to you within 7 days through the postal service. You don't have to come in and get it. And you can get an emergency passport, sir, in less than 24 hours. This is my shameless plug for the immigration department again. But I digress, sir. So I left and I went to collect my passport. I used to apply for the passports upstairs and collect the passports downstairs. So I went downstairs. This is the building with the wharf road. to go in that little pokey office. And I went to the counter to collect my passport. And the lady looks at me and she says, "Good day, Mr. Abrams." I said, "Good day." I said, "Well, I've come to collect my passport." And she goes, "Okay, did you bring your ID?" I said, "What?" She goes, "Did you bring your ID?" I said, "But you just greeted me. Good day, Mr. Abrams." She said, "Sir, you need to bring your ID to collect your passport." Because they used to copy the ID and put it in the file, right? And I said, "I don't have my ID." She goes, "Sir, but you can't get the passport." But sir, you know, but I'm a lot more even-tempered now. Back then, my head used to be hot. I said to her, "You cannot be serious." She said, "Look at the sign. Proof of identification must be presented to collect passport." I said, "What sense does that make? Do you know the most secure form of identification in the world?" She said, "What?" I said, "A passport." I said, "The most secure form of identification in the world is a passport." I said, "Just go in the drawer, look for the one with my name, and open it." She said, "Sir, but the ID does not belong to you until you collect it." I said, "So if I came back in here tomorrow with that passport in the drawer, you would accept as my ID?" She goes, "Yes, sir." I said, "Please call the chief immigration officer." She said, "The chief is..." I said, "Call the chief immigration officer." Call the chief immigration officer. And she was saying, "But sir, somebody is here and they don't have ID to collect their passport." I said, "Not somebody, you knew my name." So then I could hear, God bless him, I'm calling this in a positive light, Mr. Graves. I said, "So Miss..." She passed the phone to me, obviously he asked for me. And I explained I was there to collect my passport. I did not have my ID, right? And I told the lady to open the passport and she wouldn't do it. So I heard him tell her in no uncertain terms to give the man his passport and start wasting his time. That sign has now disappeared. But my point is, it took that for us to remove an impediment and a hiccup that was wasting people's time and quite frankly ran completely counter to common sense. There are a lot more of those that exist in our business landscape and our legal landscape. And until people call them out in many instances, they're not going to be changed. Our Law Reform Commission is looking as much as it can, sir, in identifying the things that are obsolete and making them, and changing the law to make more sense, to keep contemporary, to keep relevant. If I close on this one, sir, one of my other peeves is with bank accounts, right? We have a lot of red tape, quite frankly, in our banking system. As a lawyer, I had what we used to do, sir, to avoid getting yourself in trouble. If you're doing a transaction for somebody, quite often you open an account in your name and that person's name. So you may end up with 15 accounts because you're doing things at that time, but when you're finished with the estate, for example, you pay everything, you close off that account. But you keep yourself out of trouble by having Wilfred Abrams / estate of, so that all money went in there and you can easily track it. I went into a reputable financial institution in Barbados, for which I was at the time the holder. I think at that time it was 11 accounts. And I went to open another account. And the person asked me for my 2 forms of ID. Now, understand, sir, I transacted business with the teller. Having completed that business, I then said, okay, so now I want to open an account. The person who I had just transacted business with under the name Wilfred Abrams, who gave me funds from Wilfred Abrams' account, required proof that I was Wilfred Abrams to open another account. And I said to the person, I do not have all that documentation here. This is the only bank I'm with. I have 11 accounts with you. Can you not just go to the file of one of the other ones and whoever the last one was, and photocopy the documents? It's there. No, sir, you have to produce these things every single time you come to open an account in Barbados. That still exists as we speak. As we speak now.
I'm very familiar, Honourable Member, with it. Very.
We speak now, that system still exists and is in nonsense. I understand, sir, situations of know your client. I understand situations of, you know what, let's keep the record straight. But is it that you want me to physically pass you something and there's some magic in that? Or is it that you require the documentation? Because unless I frauded you for all 11, at which point I could fraud you for the 12th, then you should be able to take that information and make it easy for me to do it with the next one if nothing has changed. We need to get to that point, sir, when it's not simply checking boxes. We understand what it is that we're asking for, why we're asking for it, and once it is satisfied, then you do not put people through unnecessary stress. How do we get the information? It's as simple as that. I keep saying, sir, the last one, this is the definite last one, sir. In relation to forms, I'm just pitching things out there. What people don't realize is that I can write a letter. A check is a monetary instrument. In snapshot form says, pay this amount to X person. But equally, I can write a letter to the Honourable Member for, say, Michael East. I could write a letter say, please pay the sum of $5,000 to the Honourable Member for Christchurch East, and sign it and date it. Once all the information is there, that can act as a monetary instrument. So sometimes we ask people to fill out forms when the purpose is not the form, it is the information on the form. So these are things, sir, we need to look at across the board. I'm throwing some ideas out there to whoever's listening because we're talking about something that's effectively being done to increase business efficacy and make things simpler. Persons who are responsible for seeing processes through or receiving processes or granting applications need to actually understand the purpose for which they're actually doing it and must be in a position to critically look at what they're doing to see if the mischief is satisfied, if all the information is provided, right? If what you're asking for is already in 2 other documents, and be able to make those calls. And where they see that it doesn't work, then recommend it to somebody else because you may make life simple for somebody, or you may end up in the government doing exactly what it's doing right now, which is amending legislation or passing new legislation to make your life easier. But we can only often do it, sir, with your own input, your own cooperation, and bringing it to the attention of the government. So, having spoken thusly in relation to the Notaries Public Bill 2024, I do beg, sir, that it be read a second time. Thank you.
Honour for Christchurch. So,
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This is going to be very, very brief. Since the Honourable Member for St. Michael East, Christchurch East, and I spoke in Christchurch East.
Correct.
Yes. He and I spoke in consensus prior to the sitting as to the purpose of the legislation. So there is no dispute on this side, except that while he was speaking, I was reading the bill, and I came to section 4 of that bill. I'll give the particulars in a minute, but just to say that